Hello and welcome to GMI, the Guitar and Music Institute podcast, episode number 15. For many people, music is something to do with entertainment, relaxation. Music is something that helps them enjoy theatre, films, or just for its own sake. But music is also increasingly being used as a therapy for many different illnesses, from depression to dementia, anxiety, and in some cases in treating people who have created crimes. One of the leading organisations in this field is Nordoff Robbins. Nordoff Robbins is a worldwide organisation, and in Scotland they have many bases, and I was lucky enough to speak to one of their two executive directors based here in Edinburgh, Janet Halton, and she talks all about what Nordoff Robbins Scotland does in terms of healing and helping people through difficult times in their life, including people who suffer from illnesses such as cancer. Nordoff Robbins is a charity and as such needs support from people across society, and this podcast is to help heighten awareness of the work that they do and how you can help them continue this work, bringing a wide range of therapies to people who really do both need and deserve it, from the very young to the very old. If you're listening to this podcast on iTunes, then please come over to the Guitar and Music Institute website at www.guitarandmusicinstitute.com, where there are plenty of other supporting articles and videos about this podcast. So if you don't know much about the music therapy field, then I hope that this interview with Janet will be a real eye-opener. Wherever you are in the world, you think about supporting your local music therapist centres. So coming up is the interview with Janet Halton of Nordoff Robbins Scotland. Janet, it's great to be here with you in this wonderful facility, which is, it's not exactly in the middle of Edinburgh, but it's pretty close, isn't it? Because am I right in thinking you used to be outside of Edinburgh? Nordoff Robbins Scotland was it Broxburn, is that right?
Yes, we were out in Broxburn for about 5 years, so we've been in various locations since the charity was established back in 1996. So we started at Rosewell Hospital in Midlothian, and then from there we moved into a community building in Lonehead for a few years. And then,
Lonehead.
Yeah, and then we were in Lasswade for another few years.
So does it only go to places outside of Edinburgh? Is
well, this is the first time we've actually been in Edinburgh, so it's a real treat for us that we're in a central location.
You can actually get home quicker.
Exactly.
If you live inside Edinburgh,
well, that's true. Not all of our staff and clients are from Edinburgh, but it's a great place where we can be a bit more visible in the community. So. And
let's just, for our listeners, for those perhaps in Scotland, but I know there's a lot of people in America, you'll just have to look it up on Google Maps. Whereabout exactly are you in Edinburgh, this location?
We are currently on the Beaverbank Business Park, which is just off the bottom of Broughton Street. So it's
you hear that, folks? Broughton Street, look it up on your Google map.
So we're not too far from the centre of town. We're about a mile from Princes Street and Waverley Station, so just down the road. Yeah.
Fantastic. Now, through working as a musician, I know about Nordoff Robbins, but I've got to be honest, and to my eternal shame, admit that until I started actually having some contact with Nordoff Robbins, it was about 4 years ago, I had never really heard about it. So I know that's terrible, but there may be people out there who don't know much about Nordoff Robbins and when it was founded and etc. Could you maybe just fill us in, or the listeners in, on when it started and who was behind it, and what was the main driver for it?
Yeah, well, I mean, Paul Nordoff and Clive Robbins were the founders of what we call Nordoff Robbins today. So they were the pioneers in the sort of methodology of using certain musical techniques with, initially it was children at Sunfield Children's Home in England.
So were they doctors or?
No, Clive was a teacher at a special education school, and Paul Nordoff was a pianist and a composer from America, and he had come over, I think, specifically to work with Clive and others in this setting to kind of start looking at ways in which music could support and assist the children there. And
so, sorry, was it Mr. Robbins who was the American?
Clive Robbins was English.
And the other one?
And Paul Nordoff was an American
And where was
composer.
he from in America?
Oh my gosh, that's a question.
Right, you can write in, folks, or you can put comments on the website.
I should know this. I should know my Nordoff Robbins history like the back of my hand, but I'm not sure where he was originally from.
And you, am I right in saying, are from America yourself, Janet?
I am, yep. I'm from the Boston area in Massachusetts.
Fantastic, a beautiful area. So there seems to be a big connection between Nordoff Robbins, Americans, and over here in Scotland or the UK.
Well, I mean, there's still a Nordoff Robbins Centre in New York at NYU, where they also provide music therapy training for postgrads, and have a clinic for children and adults in New York. That's where Clive Robbins was also based in the latter years of his life. He sadly passed away a few years ago. But there's Nordoff Robbins centres and training all over the world, including Nordoff Robbins England and Wales, and Nordoff Robbins Scotland, and Nordoff Robbins Australia. So although Clive and Paul originally worked together in England, the first training course was in London. It's kind of evolved from that in the sort of the latter part of the 60s and the 70s.
So what was their driver behind this? Were either of these gentlemen, did they have... Well, what got them on to thinking that music may be a therapy in the first place?
I think they just really saw the impact that it could have working with children with additional learning needs, and particularly kids who found it difficult to communicate using speech. So music seemed to be a very direct way of connecting with them and engaging them in kind of meaningful activity, really. So their belief was really based on the fact that music is something that everyone can respond to. Doesn't matter if you have a disability, what your background is. It's that kind of universal language that we can all tap into. And as human beings, we're all inherently musical in the way that we use.
Hey man, the universe has a... Well... Was it free? The universal constant, 440 megahertz, I think, isn't it?
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, apparently.
Right, well...
So maybe that's got something to do with it.
Well, possibly. Yeah, we're all rhythm and melody in our physiology, so...
What was the first steps that they took then, and how did they get... This might sound a bit cruel, but how did they get people to take them seriously at the beginning?
They did a huge amount of research when they were working together, and not just in England, but all over the world. So they did a lot of recording, really kind of, looking at the fine detail of their work with the kids over a period of time and the changes. They could see it physically through the videotapes that they were looking at and sharing with other professionals. So
that's amazing. What is amazing about this is, I'm probably an ideas person, and anyone, or not anyone, but lots of people can have ideas, but to make those ideas really grow into something that's, well, let's be honest, actually supports other people's lives as well as the people who create it, is something rather special. How did they make that leap?
I think they were just very passionate about the work that they did, and they saw... I guess they just experienced firsthand what impact it could have for these children who were, some of them were quite profoundly disabled, and I think things were a bit different back, those decades ago when perhaps there wasn't the same level of support for a lot of children.
So what year are we talking about here, Janet?
I think that the bulk of their work was probably late 60s, early 70s, before Paul Nordoff passed away in the 1970s. So,
right.
Yeah.
So they weren't hippies or anything?
They were not hippies, no. They were genuine, bona fide musicians, serious researchers.
You could be a hippie and a musician?
Well,
Joni Mitchell?
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
This whole podcast is about music, health and healing. I actually thought that Nordoff Robbins, before I really knew much about it and was beginning to know something about it, was just interested in children. But that is absolutely not the case, is it?
That is not the case. I think going back to the initial work of Nordoff and Robbins, they did start work with children, but today we work with the whole range of ages, from even babies and preschoolers to older people with dementia, and it goes back to that idea of that music can really be for anyone. So we work a lot with older people with dementia. So although they might have lost their short-term memory, there's healthy parts of the brain that music can still tap into, and they can recall songs and lyrics from many, many years ago, and still retain that sense of a healthy self through the music.
There's a wonderful video on YouTube of a couple of guys from somewhere in England, and they just come over as a fantastic pair. It's a father and son. I don't know if you've seen this video.
Oh, yeah, in the car.
In the car.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And if once you've listened to this podcast, guys, you should go and check out this video. So it's a guy probably in his 30s and his father. And his dad basically has really bad dementia, but he was for years a singer. Mm-hmm. And he can't really remember or do much, but he can sing, and he's got a fantastic voice. Mm-hmm. If you put in dementia man singing in car with son, you'll see it. And I absolutely guarantee that this will, watching that video will just brighten your day up, however bad your day is, because it is astonishing that he's got all that musical ability in him. And he went on to actually do something for... I think he recorded a big album, didn't he?
I want to say, he recorded an album. He was kind of a crooner, wasn't he?
Yes. And a really good one, actually.
Yeah.
This, by the way, folks, this isn't just some old gadgie who's... he's got a fantastic voice.
Yeah.
And we're still learning, aren't we, about how music in terms of Alzheimer's and all the rest of it. And in fact, my older son works with people who have Alzheimer's, and music is a really big part of that whole, making their stays and their holidays better. So Janet, is there sort of a written methodology and outcomes regarding the work that Nordoff Robbins does? I mean, is it something which, if someone comes to you with a child, say, who's got autism, or is it something you can say to parents or carers, if we do this, we can expect that?
Not really. It's not as prescriptive as that, although that would be nice and easy for, parents and carers to give a music pill or something that to help whatever issue it might be. But the fact is that we're working with individuals, and everyone's different and responds to music in different kinds of ways, and that's really the beauty of music, is that it is so flexible. And although there is structure within music, it can be tailored to different personal tastes, what motivates people. So we're really working in a person-centered way and tapping into what interests and motivates that individual, and what their needs are, really. So, for example, somebody with dementia, their needs can be hugely different to the needs of a 3-year-old who's just been diagnosed on the autistic spectrum. So, for one, we might be looking at communication skills and social interaction, and the other end of the spectrum, it might be kind of engaging with memories and reminiscence and that kind of thing.
So with a child who's, I don't know if we can say profoundly autistic, I don't know if that even exists, but they're in lockdown and they're not communicating, is it the case that music therapy in a number of more than the average sees those children beginning to actually respond verbally to the people around them?
I don't know, sort of in terms of percentages, how many would start using speech or engaging verbally, but in the music therapy, we can, even if the child is very difficult to engage, we can work on the basis that anything that they do can be interpreted as musical. So even if a child...
The Buddy Richard approach, everything's musical.
Well, I guess so, yeah. Even if a child is walking around the room or hitting their hand on a table or kicking their foot on the floor, then that can be responded to musically and worked with through the music. And I
saw that with one of your videos, actually. It was Alana, a little girl.
Okay, yeah.
So the reason I'm kind of asking you these things, Janet, is because you're not only the executive director, you are a music therapist yourself, aren't you?
That's right, yep.
Could you tell us exactly how did you get into music therapy, when did you become aware of it, what qualifications you need to be a music therapist, and what exactly do you do in your job day to day?
Yeah. Well, for me personally, I've played the piano since I was 6 years old, and funnily enough, I started playing piano as a physical therapy for myself. I'd fallen off my bike and broken my wrist, so that's how I kind of got into it, but always really, really enjoyed music and didn't see myself going down a performing pathway, but wanted to use music in my career somehow. So at university I studied psychology and music in sort of separate streams.
Wow, that feels heavy.
And yeah, it was pretty heavy. But then I became aware of music therapy. I was studying in London and just did some asking around and visited the Nordoff Robbins Centre, which was in an old building in Kentish Town at the time. And I didn't actually train at Nordoff Robbins. I trained at another school in London, but that's how I kind of got interested in it. And at the moment I think there's maybe 7 or 8 training courses in the UK. So it's all postgraduate 2-year master's training in music therapy.
Sorry, folks, that noise is, I think, someone using a shredder.
Somebody's shredding, yeah. So in terms of my day-to-day, I have worked for Nordoff Robbins since 1999 and started as a music therapist and have latterly fallen into the role, I guess, as one of the executive directors of the charity.
Or as I say up here, a high Hedian.
Well, yeah, I guess so. So I do that. That's kind of the bulk of my job now, but both myself and my co-director maintain 1 day of clinical work through the week, because it's really important for us to maintain that practice and the sort of grassroots where we've come from. So I work currently in this base here in Beaverbank. I see a few clients who come in here every week. Right. But a lot of the therapists who work for the charity are doing outreach work, so going out into schools and hospitals and day centres, and that's really the bulk of the work that we do. It's in the community.
Fantastic. Now, just to pick you up on something you said earlier, you said there are other centres teaching music therapy. Mm-hmm. Is there a prescribed way of learning music therapy, or is there different stresses depending on where you go?
There are different stresses depending on where you go. I think in the UK there's probably more similarities than dissimilarities, whereas if you're comparing a training course in the UK with Taiwan or something, there might be significant differences, but all of the UK training courses are working with music as a kind of creative tool rather than a behavioral prescriptive kind of, here's music, you listen to it and that'll make you feel differently. It's about engaging people in improvisation and co-working in the therapy with that kind of relationship at the core. So all music therapists in the UK are state registered with the Health and Care Professions Council. So regardless of the training background, we all have to adhere to quite specific standards of proficiency as dictated by the HCPC. So. Wow,
that sounds impressive. Is there different expectations around the world about what music therapy can do for people?
That's a tricky one to answer, I guess, because I'm not quite sure what the different expectations around the world are.
You mentioned Taiwan, for example.
Yes, well, I think that just popped up because I think there's some Nordoff Robbins training or delivery that's developing in that area, but around the world I think it varies tremendously in terms of the recognition of music therapy, what it is, what it can do. And some cultures, I think, music's been around as a sort of healing medium for centuries, if not longer. So I think there's certain...
And in some cultures there isn't even any indigenous music. Unbelievably. And do you share research, and is it kind of like universities where, they're feeding into, everybody's sharing information with everyone? Does that happen in music?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of, with the internet now, there's a lot of online journals and sharing of research. There's a British journal, there's lots of different music therapy journals, as well as, music therapists contributing to other professional sort of journals and conferences and all over the world. So, we have in Nordoff Robbins Scotland a new head of research who started just in September last year. So we're developing our own research practice internally. Wonderful. And linking in with Nordoff Robbins England and Wales, who have quite a well-established research department as well.
So there's 2 sites in Scotland, isn't there? Is that right?
Nordoff Robbins Scotland has 4 clinics in Scotland.
Oh, right.
So
Okay.
we've got one in Edinburgh, one in Glasgow, one in Fife, and another in Dundee.
Okay.
And we've also developed some services up in Aberdeen over the last year. So we're kind of spreading out a bit more in Scotland.
Okay, you are listening to GMI, the Guitar and Music Institute. I'm in conversation with Janet Halton, who is the Executive Director of Nordoff Robbins Scotland. And we're talking in this podcast about music, health and healing. I just wanted to ask you about instruments, because we were talking about how different people respond. Do they respond differently to different instruments? Do they have a gravitational pull to, just like as a child you might like drums or bass or this, just any child?
Yeah.
Do you see this happening?
I guess not really, because everyone has their own preferences and likes and dislikes, things that they're drawn to or not drawn to. In terms of what the therapists use, I suppose most people who train to become music therapists have a background or a good standard of at least one harmonic instrument. So myself, I play the piano. We have some therapists working within the team here who are guitar players. But it's important for the therapist to have some kind of instrument that can ground and, harmonic instrument that can hold potentially big sounds and be quite flexible and adaptable.
So harmonica players need not apply.
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't say that. I mean, I'm sure you can do amazing things with a harmonica as well. But as far as the people that we're working with, it really varies tremendously. So it can be, but I guess the point is that they don't have to know how to play anything either. So they can experiment on a whole load of instruments that are really accessible, lots of different percussion instruments, as well as just using their voices, or using objects in the room, as I say, just walking around or dancing or moving.
So it's about expression.
It is, yeah.
Janet, earlier I was talking about how I thought it was just for children, and you rightly corrected me. What is the total range of people that you treat, that you help? Because I see you even deal with people who suffer from cancer. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. We've got some of our therapists working in both children's and adult hospices.
I've got to say I was at one of your events quite a few years ago, and it was incredibly moving because there was a couple of children up in an upper balcony of the Glasgow Fruit Market, and basically they only had, I think, 6 months to live, and they looked so happy, and they had written a song. It makes you count your blessings, and just wonderful kids, and you could really see the benefits to their short lives that Nordoff Robbins had given them. But sorry, I'm cutting across you again. You're talking about the different types of illnesses and people that you actually work with. Yeah,
it does vary. So we work with children and adults with learning disabilities, people with mental health issues. As you've said, we work in hospices. We work with, not only the individuals in the hospice, but also bereaved families. We work in sort of forensic settings as well. So,
that's interesting. What's that?
People who have committed offences. So one of our therapists works in a high secure hospital, so people who have mental health problems and who have committed an offence. So quite traumatic upbringings at times.
So again, I'm going to ask you a really broad question, which probably doesn't have a definitive answer. As best you can, for the listeners out there, how does a course of treatment actually work? I mean, if you make up the examples and try and take us through it.
Yeah. Just in terms of the process, I guess we get referrals from just about everyone. So in the clinics, we take referrals from parents and carers or social workers, or sometimes the individuals themselves. Or if we're working in a school or another kind of outreach setting, we work in collaboration with other professionals, teachers, and that sort of thing. So We have very kind of clear sort of reasons for referral. So we would probably work with somebody over a few weeks just to get to know them a bit, and they would get to know us and get to know the setting of music therapy and what's possible. So we would do that assessment and then think about, well, what could we do for this individual? What aims and outcomes might be achievable through music therapy.
And if that is a child, do you do that in conjunction with the parents?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we don't work in isolation at all, so it's really important.
Do you pull in other agencies as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really important to kind of be transparent and communicate with, everyone who's involved in the care of a particular individual, because at the end of the day, you might see them for an hour a week, but obviously there's a huge amount of other things going on in their outside life, and you do want music therapy not just to be about the here and now and that 30 minutes to half an hour. We really want music therapy to have a lasting impact, so it's not only thinking about the time in music therapy, but how it affects their day-to-day life with their families, in their schools.
What have you witnessed in terms of the change in music therapy over the years? How has it changed?
How has it changed individuals, or how has the profession changed?
How's the provision changed?
I think it's still something that a lot of people don't know about, or they think they know what music therapy is, but maybe not entirely sure.
I can identify with that.
Well, it's a developing profession. I think people are becoming more and more aware of it, and it's maybe where speech and language therapy was 20, 30 years ago. So our aim is to kind of get music therapy much more into the mainstream so that it's seen as an essential service for the people who really need it, rather than an extra or a nice to have, because unfortunately in these difficult economic times, music therapy can be seen as a luxury, and it's often the first thing to get cut from school budgets and things like that. So,
certainly difficult economic times for some, but not others.
Well, exactly.
So I've got all these. That was one of my sort of questions for you. My other question was, how, if someone's out there and they are interested in what you've been talking about, what's the route for them, regardless of where they are in the world, I suppose, just to make it even harder? Do they get into music therapy?
How do they get into music therapy?
Yeah, how would someone become a music therapist?
Well, I guess they need to be a musician, first and foremost.
What sort of level would they need to be at as a musician?
Well, in the UK, I don't think you need to have a music degree specifically, but you should have kind of grade 8 or equivalent, at least on one instrument. And yeah, as far as doing your postgraduate, you would need to have some kind of undergraduate training to go into the music therapy master's programs.
So what if they were just really good players but didn't have a degree? Does that mean they can't then do that?
In all honesty, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it would be quite difficult not to have the kind of formal undergraduate background.
And when someone approaches you, and if they're lucky enough to be employed by you, how long before they can actually start working in the field?
Well, Nordoff Robbins Scotland isn't a training facility, so we employ therapists who have trained either at Nordoff Robbins down in England, or at Queen Margaret University in Musselburgh, or any of the other kind of recognised professional training courses in the UK. So we don't train people. Right. But we employ people after they become registered with the Health and Care Professions Council.
Now, Nordoff Robbins is a registered charity, isn't it?
Yes.
And that means you need support.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go about getting that support? And how, obviously, you want people to know about Nordoff Robbins, but are you supported by government agencies at all, or Creative Scotland, or any of these people?
Some of our projects are funded through Creative Scotland, the YMI Access to Music Fund, I believe.
Is that Youth Person Initiative?
Youth Music Initiative. Some of our projects are, yes. But a huge amount of our funds come through fundraising. So
tell us a little about those fundraising activities. What sort of things would you do?
Well, our biggest fundraising event is the Scottish Music Awards, and that's every November.
It's a good blast, that one.
It is a good blast, yeah. It's not only awards, but it's live music from some really fantastic Scottish acts, and not only Scottish acts, but international.
And does Nordoff Robbins do that sort of thing in every country that it's in?
Well, I'm not sure. I know that they do it in England and Wales. In fact, the Silver Cloughs are this Friday down in London. So that's quite a big event for them as well.
So are you saying that a vast majority for Nordoff Robbins Scotland income for the year comes from that one big event?
It does. I mean, there's a huge number of other smaller fundraising events over the course of the year, from golf days to, I don't know, we've got a new one coming up at the SSE Hydro, Race the Roof. So, so that side of things is growing and developing for the charity, because we rely hugely on fundraising income to support the work that we do, because even if people can't afford music therapy, we don't turn people away. We do try and offer a service for everyone who needs it. So.
I hope everybody heard that and clocked that out there. This podcast really does go worldwide, so wherever you are in the world, there's a good probability that there'll be a Nordoff Robbins or a music therapy centre in the country of the person that's sitting listening to us.
Possibly. I mean, we're not in
every country.
Not in every country, so but there's certainly information available online through the different Nordoff Robbins websites.
It's in America, isn't it?
It is. There's the centre in New York.
Canada?
Canada? I don't think so. No, I don't think there is one.
We'll have to catch up.
Yeah.
But you're in Australia.
In Australia, yep.
But maybe not New Zealand.
Not that I'm aware of. I'll have to do my homework on where Nordoff Robbins is. But.
You know what I'm going to do? So if you're listening to this on iTunes, you've got the podcast, and it's the sound's being scooshed straight into your ears and your eyeballs are looking at something else. But if you come over to the Guitar Music Institute, that's the GMI Guitar Music Institute website at www.guitarandmusicinstitute.com, I'm going to put up as much as I can to support this actual podcast in terms of links and maps, if there's maps which show where music therapy and Nordoff Robbins is around the world, and just about anything else that I can actually do, because it sounds to me that as people need to understand the power of music in terms of just the implications of a complete, it's almost like a chakra type thing, isn't it? Just the resonance of waves and how it can change people's lives, and you do need that support, don't you?
Definitely.
So Janet, it's been great speaking with you. I hope you've enjoyed it. She was really nervous before we started. I thought, I don't know, she just came across that way, but she wasn't. But it's been really great, and I'm actually, the facility that I'm in, it looks really, really wonderful. I'm going to, hopefully Janet will allow me to take a few photographs of just herself and the place in here, and you can see it on the website. So Janet, it's been great talking with you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Janet Halton of Nordoff Robbins Scotland, and it was not just enjoyable but gave you real food for thought. The work that Nordoff Robbins do and other music therapists organisations do across the world really is vital in this growing field, and we're learning all the time how music can really help people. So I would urge you to think about clicking the links through to Nordoff Robbins and actually supporting them in some way. It's not just about giving money. It could also mean that you support them in such ways as coming up with ideas for how they can raise funds with different activities. So thanks for listening to this episode. If you've enjoyed this GMI podcast, please visit the GMI website at www.guitarmusicinstitute.com. On this podcast's specific webpage, there is our Patreon link. We're always trying to encourage people to support us and to help us grow this podcast into something really huge. My name's Ged Brockie. I look forward to talking with you again real soon with another podcast on a music related or guitar related subject. Until then, goodbye.